Welcome to the Fix Your BS podcast, where we dive deep into the belief systems that shape our lives and hold us back from achieving our dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Pursley, also known as Dr. G, and in each episode, we will explore powerful conversations with successful individuals across business and money and relationship and health and personal growth. So join us as we unpack their journeys. We challenge limiting beliefs and discover practical insights to help you build your dream life on your terms. It's time to fix your BS and unlock your full potential. Today, we have a returning guest. We don't have a ton of returning guests, but when people wow us on our podcast and when we have unfinished business, we like to talk and bring them back on, especially when they're making a massive shift in their own life. We want to unpack that and figure out what's happening. Today, we have Sarah Weaver. We had Sarah back in April of this year. And in just 8 short months, we said, you know what, let's get her back on. We have to discuss some major changes that are going on. And if you didn't watch that episode, just so you know, Sarah is an author, speaker, coach, real estate investor, and business owner. She runs 3 businesses. She serves both real estate investors and real estate agents. She has been traveling the country. She's coaching. She does real estate coaching and hosting intimate retreats for investors. It is literally a dream life, but now she's making a massive shift. So let's dive into that, Sarah. Thanks for coming back. Really appreciate you. And talk
Thank
about what's
you.
happening with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And hi, everybody. I'm excited to tell you guys some big changes and bear with me. I told Greg that this is the first time I'm telling the internet. So we're just going to sort through it together.
I love it. Maybe we can find out some things of how you got to this point. But let's recap for everybody what we talked about in April. You're a real estate investor, real estate coach. You help other people, but the biggest thing was you traveled around. You lived off of just in the
out,
moment.
out of out of a carry-on suitcase, everyone. It's been 5 years, 10 months, and 15 days. I looked it up before this call, where I have been homeless. I have been intentionally homeless, buying rental properties, helping other people buy rental properties through my coaching program, my furnishing business, my in-person retreat business, Invested Adventures. Everything I do is to support real estate investors to buy property. I've never really been selling the nomadic lifestyle. It's always been, let's put real estate properties in your real estate portfolio to create passive income for you so that you can have more options, whether it's become work optional, quit a job that you hate, start a passion project that makes you money, be a better husband to your wife, be a better mother to your kids, just be a better human. I think the world would be better if we all had a little bit more freedom and a little bit more options. And so that's what I've been passionate about. But along the way, I think people have really fallen in love with what? You're homeless? What does that mean? And so being nomadic has been a big part of my identity.
Isn't it interesting, though, that I think a lot of people tell you they want to travel more, they want to be a little more spontaneous, they want to be free, but they've fallen into a trap. And I don't mean a trap externally, I mean internally in their own mind of believing that they can't really do that. Like it's not possible for them. What do you say to
Yes.
somebody like that? Because you're doing it. You were doing it, and we're going to switch into what you're doing now. But like,
Yeah. I I mean, out of kindness, I say, yeah, you're probably right. It probably isn't for you. I think if that person has that many limiting beliefs on them that they think they can't, buy a plane ticket on their phone and then board the plane, then I mean, there's only so much coaching that I can do with someone like that. And also then they probably don't really want it. I think some people feel like they should have these goals. You should read so many books a year, or you should progress your dating relationship into marriage, or you should want these things. But I tell people, like, stop shoulding all over yourself.
mhm.
It probably is that you actually don't really want to travel, or you do it, in my opinion.
One of the things that I work with people when we first get into the programs that we have is I ask them to take a step back and just sit quietly and actually think about the life that they would like to live and
Yep.
actually envision that. And it doesn't make sense. And what generally happens for people is they come up with some things that pop into their head that they're like, I don't know where that came from, but I've never really known that that was something I wanted to do before. Ultimately, what people want to be is happy. I mean,
Oh,
they
yes.
just want to be happy. And so what we teach is, how can you build your life on your terms? How do you build the life
Hmm.
you want? Not everybody should be a business owner. Not everyone should live a nomadic lifestyle. Not everyone should invest like other people invest. You got to figure out what you want and why that
Yes.
matters to you, and build that life for yourself instead of living
Yes.
someone else's life. So, what do you tell people about that?
I think first, like, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. You don't need to have it all figured out. Instead, allow yourself to sit with your thoughts and either grab a piece of paper or grab your keyboard. I prefer a keyboard because sometimes my mind can work faster than my hand. And thankfully, I'm a pretty fast typer. And so I just put, a blank Google Doc in front of me and I just allow myself to dream. So is that two home bases? For me, that probably is what my dream is to have two home bases, or what used to be called a vacation home, but I just would split my time between the two homes. And then a certain amount of money that coming in every month effortlessly. I'm not bogged down with the details. I don't love bookkeeping, so I have a great bookkeeper. And these are just examples of things that came out from doing this exercise. And exactly to your point, I think what happens is some of the things that you want, you're like, whoa, I didn't know I wanted that. And one of those things that came up for me was kids. I think
Mm,
that for years I was telling myself, oh, I mean, if it happens, great. For those of you that have kids, not really a great way to like approach a huge life decision like reproducing. Like, yeah, maybe. And I realized it wasn't that I was unsure that I wanted children, it was a protective mechanism. Because if I don't really want them, Greg, and then that doesn't happen, I don't fall in love, I can't get pregnant, whatever it may be. Well, if I didn't really want it, then I can't be that disappointed, right?
mm,
And so what I realized in doing this, what I call vivid vision exercise, where I'm sitting down and I'm creating a vivid vision of my life, I like to do things 10 years out and 3 years out. I like to have kind of two different versions. They end up being really similar, but obviously different timeline. And during that exercise, it was like, wow, I saw children.
mm.
And
Tell me about that.
that,
What was your first reaction when that came up, where you that popped into your mind, where you were like, wait a second, that's new.
yeah, I think it was, oddly, it was a little bit of relief. It didn't scare me. It didn't feel like, oh no, what am I gonna do? I guess I gotta start dating now. No, it was like, oh, okay. Like almost like admitting to yourself about something that you really want. Like it feels good to finally admit that you want that. So I felt a little bit of relief. And then as I allowed myself to like sit in it and even like visualize like what do these children look like? What does my life look like with children in it? Yeah, I'm excited. I think it sounds really cool.
Well, I think that's kind of, you hit the nail on the head there where you said you were excited, because that excitement, euphoria, authenticity, letting your dreams come out of you is going to give you that excitement, that elation where you're like, yes, this just makes sense. It's like the next logical step. Something that I love that you're talking about, though, is before it didn't make sense to you. And we are human beings. We will evolve in our life, and we're allowed to change, and we're allowed to experience new things. And just because you didn't want something 10 years ago doesn't mean it's not right for you now. And I think a lot of
Absolutely.
times people do put that wall up, like, I don't like this, or it's never going to be that way, or whatever, instead of reanalyzing, because we're coming up to the end of the year. The last week of the year is personally my favorite week of the year, because I get to look back at my previous year. I get to look back at the successes and the things that went the way I thought and the things that didn't. And I get to look ahead, and I look at 1, 3, 5, and 10 personally, because I like to kind of look at that. And I'll look at a 10-year
Yep.
and pull it back to 1 year. But it's very similar. I noticed that when I have people on this program, there's principles that always pop up, and one of the principles that
Yes.
pop up on a regular basis is having a vision for the future. So tell me about your
Hmm.
vision for the future. How many kids? Like what's different now than it was when we talked in April?
Yeah. Well, I think before we do, you brought up something that really triggered like an really interesting fact that I've heard, which is a scientist got people together, and like a psychology researcher got people together. His name was Nicholas Epley, and he asked a group of people, how much has your personality changed in the last 10 years? And most of them said, yeah, quite a bit actually. And whether it be good or bad, or, maybe it was their political views or their views on money or their views on religion or family dynamics, whatever it might be, they were like, yeah, I think that I've changed quite a bit. And then the same group of people were asked, how much do you think you're going to change in the next 10 years? And most of them said, oh, no, no, no. I mean, I don't think I'm going to change very much. And it's interesting. People think that, like, all the change has happened, right?
Mm,
It's like the way that they look at their own history. I think also as humans, we have a hard time looking ahead. It's why most Americans don't have, a savings for retirement, is they can't actually picture themselves aging and getting old. So why save for the future? I'm never going to get old. So, like, why would I save? And so I think that it's really important for people to just take a minute and look back in retrospect and accept the fact that they've changed quite a bit, and that they probably are going to change quite a bit over the next 10 years. And so as you ask me what that looks like, I mean, I have a really good idea, but I also am really attuned to the fact that I've changed a lot in 10 years. So therefore, I know I'm going to change a lot in the next 10 years.
It's interesting if you revisit. So a lot of times when I talk to people, they're like, man, 10 years, I don't know. You're not casting that and putting it in stone. What you're really doing
No.
is next year, you're going to revisit that and you're going to be like, does it still look the same? Does it look different? Because it should continuously evolve. Like if I cast out 10 years from now, and I say, this is what I think it'll
Yes.
look like. And then I do it again and again and again. And 10 years from now, I look back at what I had said my life was going to look like. It's probably not going to
Mhm.
look like that, but it gives you a vision from that moment of where you want to go. What's interesting too is visionaries. When you look at like the operating system, entrepreneurial operating system, they talk about visionary versus integrator a lot, which is
Mhm.
that's the system we use when I run my businesses or when I consult people in business. Um, they talk about that visionary versus integrator, and they talk about less than 10% of people are really visionaries. So for most people,
Mhm.
it's hard to think ahead and cast that vision. And I really think it's part of our society that makes it to where you don't cast a vision. I think we are trained to do a job and, get your paycheck hourly and move, do just be a part of society, not being a visionary. I think they kind of knock that out of you, which
Yeah,
is
well,
why
I,
most
I
people
think
settle. Yeah.
I think not only like societal norms like create a lot of integrators, but I also think that what I've seen from my own coaching is that people tend to not want to set goals because what happens if you don't want them? I mean, it's exactly what I shared at the beginning. I was nervous to admit this desire that I didn't even know I had, because what if you don't get it? And so what I love about how I approach the vivid vision and how I teach people to approach, vision casting in the future is, if you want to make, let's say, $20,000 a month, let's say $10,000 a month. Let's say you want to make $10,000 a month, ideally relatively passively through, let's say, real estate investing. Then just write that number down, 10,000. The problem is that an integrator is going to, well, how am I going to do that? Like, how many properties is that? If that's $100 a month of cash flow, and then they start, spiraling into this detailed hole of how to get there. So what I encourage people to do when you're doing your vivid vision, don't worry about the how. Do not worry about the how. Just worry about the what. And so what I found that works really well for me is to start with a bulleted list. So the very first thing that I did is I wrote on at the top of a piece of paper. This was by hand, and I wrote, what does it look like to live to my full potential?
That's a great question. And that's a
So
question people should sit with. In fact, I recommend everyone write that down and sit with that for a little while, because you're going to recognize some things that you're doing right now that are limiting your potential.
yeah. Yeah, so like, well, let's take a very easy example. How many people do what I call doom scroll, whether it be on Twitter or social media or whatever you're doom scrolling on, you spend probably more time on your phone than you would like, especially parents out there. I see it all the time where you're spending a lot of time on your phone when your kids are in the same room. And that's probably not you living up to a level of excellence. Not to say that you don't need to do, I mean, trust me, guys, I'm doom scrolling, okay? This is why it's an example. But it's not an example. It's not the life that I want to live when I'm living a life like a life of excellence. And for me, I want to do most things with excellence. Not to the point of being a perfectionist. I do think done is better than perfect. But that is my reputation. I want people to, when they interact with me, I want them to feel like, wow, Sarah operates from a place of excellence. And so that's why I love that question. What does my life look like when I'm living to my full potential?
Mm.
So I was able, Greg, to just brain dump. So the first time I ever asked myself this question was in December of 2021. And the things that came out were incredible. It was, I wanted $10,000 a month just from coaching. I wanted $10,000 a month just from my rental properties. I wanted to be a guest on a Bigger Pockets podcast. I wanted Bigger Pockets to accept my book proposal. I had turned in my book proposal at this point. I wanted one of my businesses to gross $100,000. It had made like $14,000 at that point. It had launched the month before, so that was pretty good. And so I had all these things written down. And what's incredible is that within 30 days, I accomplished like 50% of the list.
Mm.
Not $100,000 annually, but I was on track, right? Like I hit whatever that monthly goal was. I got on the Bigger Pockets podcast. They accepted my book proposal. I actually had $12,000 a month coming in from coaching. I hit like 8,700 a month for rental income, passive income. And so it was incredible how much the needle was moved forward because I really believed that that's what it would look like for Sarah Weaver to be living her full potential. So therefore, I 100% believed it was possible. Of course, I can live up to my potential.
I love that you're using the word believe, though, because a belief is literally just a thought that you keep repeating to yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
so it seeps into your subconscious and that becomes what you believe. And so when you have that vision, one of the things I find people stop themselves when creating a vision is they don't give themselves permission to dream. They
Mm.
immediately stop themselves when they start to have oh, I would like to, and then they go, yeah, but, and then they can't. How did you give yourself permission to do that?
That's a great question. And I love that you're using the word permission because I actually start off all of my in-person retreats with a permission slip, kind of brought to us by Brene Brown. She talks about how she gave herself a permission slip. She had it in the pocket of her jean jacket when she met Oprah, and she wrote herself a permission slip to be giddy and excited because she was meeting freaking Oprah. And you didn't need, she didn't need to act polished and like coy, like, oh yeah, just another day in the life. No, she was meeting Oprah. It was so cool for her. And so I really love the idea of permission slips. So I often give myself permission to really believe that I'm really good at making money.
Hmm.
And then I've actually been asked by my accountability group, they're like, Sarah, you say that often. They're like, how do you know you're good at making money? And I'm like, well, track record. Like when I announce a course, it sells. When I, offer one-on-one coaching to someone, they sign up. And I challenged the women in my accountability group the same thing. I was like let's all use fake names, but like, Jamie, you pitched that huge, interior design bid and they accepted, did they not? Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, well that wasn't a
So
mistake.
don't discount that. Like celebrate that. It's celebrating the small wins is what you're doing. You're saying, oh, it's just you're recognizing the wins that you actually have.
Yeah, and I like track record. So one thing that I don't go around saying is I don't go around saying, wow, I'm really good at eating healthy. I'm really good at losing weight. Those are not true yet. But what am I? I'm really disciplined. I have a lot of grit. And so do we think somebody with a lot of grit and a lot of discipline can you lose weight? Absolutely. I also have lost a significant amount of weight. And so I know that I can lose the next, 40, 50 pounds because, well, I've done it before. Do I think that I'm really good at it? No, I wouldn't go that far. But do I believe that I can do it? Well, yes, of course. And I think that often people don't spend enough time looking at their track record. I call it like a brag sheet. If I'm having a student that's really struggling with negative mindset, I tell them, listen, you're never going to share this with anyone. You do not have to share it with me. I actually recommend don't sharing it with me, but just write down a brag sheet.
Mm.
What are those things that people compliment you on? Like, oh, Greg, you're always asking great question. You're very intuitive. You're very inquisitive. Okay, well then that goes on the sheet. Somebody that's really good at lifting heavy weights, write that down. They're like everyone is great at something. They just don't allow themselves to tell them that they are.
One of the things, this is exactly and one of those principles that comes back up. So many coaches that are really great and helping other people, this is one of the things that comes up in my book. We talk about, in our groups, we talk about the asset versus liability list, and it's really the thoughts you think about yourself. So what's interesting is when we ask somebody to do that, most of the time they will write down 2 to 3 times the amount of liabilities of the negative things they think about themselves, as opposed to the positive things that they think about themselves. So when we're talking
Yeah.
about assets and liabilities, we're talking about, this is in the thought process, not in the, real world. But
Yes.
every scholar has, when you talk about religious scholars throughout history, they've all come down to one thing. They've all agreed on one thing, and it's that you become what you think about. And so the
Hmm.
question becomes, well, what are you thinking about yourself? Are you constantly beating yourself up with all the negative things, or are you recognizing the wins and the positive things that are happening in your life? Because if you think about all the positive things and you notice you practice gratitude and appreciation, and you stack those wins up, all of a sudden your attitude starts to change, your perception starts to change, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden things start happening in your life that are different. And then you need to recognize that those things are happening and continue that process until it becomes part of who you are. And that's
Hmm.
such a small step in the right direction. And I really think that's one of the big issues, though, that people want everything now, that they're not willing to
Yeah.
take those small little tiny steps every single day.
Well, yeah. Let's take weight loss as an example, because I definitely don't want your listeners to think that I'm like great at all these things, guys. There's so many things I'm flawed at, and so let's take weight loss. So last year I lost 47 pounds, and again I was having a really hard time telling myself like you're great at losing weight. I'm like, well, you're really good at gaining it back too. And so what I did is I was like, okay, that first of all, that thought doesn't serve me. And so I got into the habit of I would just like swipe thoughts away. So for anyone that's dating on dating apps, left is reject, right is we want to match with this person. So I would left swipe my thoughts. I'm like, that thought's not helping. Like calling myself fat is not helping. Like those are not going to get me where I'm going. So instead I grabbed onto things that I know are true. So like, Sarah, are you smart enough to read a label? Well, yes. Do I know what the label means? Not yet. Okay, Sarah, are you smart enough to find someone who can teach you to read the label? Yes. Okay. Now, are you smart enough to count your macros? Like how, and all I started was all I wanted to count was protein. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm capable. Did it mean that I knew exactly what to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack? No, I wasn't there yet, but I knew that I was smart enough to figure this out, right? And so it was baby steps that led to losing 47 pounds and keeping it off because I did believe I was smart enough. Did I think that I was athletic or fit or even, sexy all the time? No. But I knew that I was smart enough to figure this part of my life out. And then it led to success.
That's awesome, though. And that's so true. Like, you backed out. You said, well, okay, I'm paying attention to this. I'm going to, I am very specific, and you're like, no, that's not really true. Then you backed out, and you're like, well, what about this? Well, it's not really there yet. Okay. You backed out. What about this? Oh yeah. Okay. I'm smart enough to learn it. I just haven't put time and energy and effort into learning it, and so on and so forth, until you became that person. That's so smart. I think so many people deject themselves when they maybe do set a goal finally, or set a vision, and they're like, yeah, well, that's not going to happen because that's not who I am. Well, yeah, of course it's not who you are. You can't do it now because you're not that person, but you can become that person. What would be the next
Absolutely.
logical step in moving towards that vision, or becoming the person that you need to become? It's
And I, oh,
go ahead.
go, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think so many people, and I fell into this trap too, because like you said, I'm not perfect. I have a lot of, this is a life's journey, right? But I wanted everything and I wanted it now. I pushed too hard instead of letting things come over time and paying attention while that comes. I was trying to be in a hurry. I have to get to the end. I have to have it all now. And because I don't have it, then I'm a failure. Well, no, that's not true. It's
Hmm.
life is a journey. There's peaks, there's ebbs and flows. So go ahead, Sarah.
No, I just think that it's really important to give yourself grace.
Hmm.
And so I find so many of my clients are, well, I couldn't do it last year. I didn't buy a rental property in 2024, so I'm probably not going to buy one in 2025. And instead ask yourself, like, who do I need in my life to make this change? So that was something that I did. So I knew that everything I had done it up to that point to lose weight wasn't really working. And so I was like, okay, I finally am in a place where I have some disposable income. Why don't I go straight to the source? I call it taking the penthouse to the top. And I was like, why don't I hire a one-on-one dietitian and nutrition who's going to look at my blood work panel, figure out exactly why I've like not only like held on to this weight, but I just keep gaining more. And come to find out, I had like a bunch of stuff wrong with me. It was most of it was all fixable. But thank goodness I spent the money. And so I do want to point out just like a complete area of privilege that I could drop that much money on a private dietitian. But instead of saying I can't afford it, it was okay, I can't justify the money, is what I started to say. Because really, I could afford it. The money was in the bank, or I have enough credit cards, right? And so I was like, okay, I can't justify the money. So then I went and I said, okay, what would allow you to justify the money? And I said, okay, let's say this isn't the exact math, but let's say that the dietitian was $1,000 a month. Well, then I just was like, okay, well, then I'm going to go find someone that will pay me $1,000 a month to teach them how to launch their next MTR or travel the world or do this. And so I quite literally created another stream of income to justify then turning around and spending that money on the dietitian.
And that's awesome. I mean, that's such a, it's not only it creating a vision, which a lot of people think is kind of in that woo woo headspace of like, oh yeah, it's all fake and whatever. It's just maybe and what if and puppies and rainbows. But it's also very logical. It's like, we talk about reverse engineering all the time, which you had already mentioned. You take what you want, what lifestyle you want, and I found out that I can live my absolute dream lifestyle on $22,000 a month. Like I could have a jet that I'm able to jet suite or whatever. It's where you buy miles and stuff. I would
Yep.
able be able to travel private. I'd be able to go and do anything I wanted to do. We'd have a chef. We'd have a personal nutritionist, somebody to help us, exercise therapist. Like we listed all of it out, and we were like, wow, the life of our absolute dreams is not as far off as we might think. So you took something that was this, I don't know, heady idea, and you turned it into, okay, well, what's the next logical step, and or how can I make that
Yeah.
happen? What a much better question. I love that you're doing that. So give everybody, like, the change from where you were to where you are and where you're headed now is something I'd really like to talk about, because you're flipping what we talked about 6 to 8 months ago on its
Yeah.
head, and now you're headed in this new direction. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've been nomadic for 5 years. Well, it'll be 6 years in January, which is just wild. For
Wow.
those of you like that don't know, I set out just to be nomadic for 11 months. I told my family I'll be back by Christmas. I was turning 30 that year, like a year in. So I left when I was 29. So I thought, okay, when I'm 30, this imaginary deadline of adulthood, especially for women, it's like, okay, by 30, then I'll come back to the US. I'll get a mortgage where I actually live in the house and, do these things that my peers are doing, like going on a ton of online dates, trying to find their person and all these things. Well, 5 years later, I'm still living like a backpacker, traveling the world. My hotels have gotten a little nicer. My backpack turned into a suitcase, and I now have a speaking career. So I spoke 30 times on like 30 different stages this year. So it was a lot more hotels than, Airbnbs in Mexico, like I'm in right now. And what happened along the way is I got really tired.
Mm.
And my life got more and more fun. I think for some people, as they're nomadic or a digital nomad, they get really lonely. I'm not lonely. The opposite. I have like today when we get off this podcast, I'm meeting 6 entrepreneurs at a bar that's actually closed, but I know the owner and they agreed to open up just so that me and my 6 friends can, have game night in their bar. So I know plenty of people and I have this incredible support system. Actually, right before this call was on the phone with an interior designer. She is offering to help me, design this home that I'm under contract for at cost. I mean, I've built this incredible network. But what has happened is I've gone back to that question. What would it look like for you to live up to your full potential?
Mm.
And my full potential includes some really big milestones related to my career that I need to be in one place to do these. I need stable internet. I need to not be on a plane every 7 days. I mean, anyone that's traveled, that travel day, you're not productive. Sure, you say you're going to answer emails in the airport,
But then
but
you end up in the airport drinking a beer or something and it's at
the
7 a.m. because time doesn't matter there, right?
the day just gets eaten by
Yeah.
these travel days.
Yeah.
Well, I switched accommodation. So switched I don't like to say switch beds. Okay, guys, get your mind out of the gutter. But I switched accommodation 107 times this year so far.
Wow.
That wasn't very productive. Okay. I mean, I lost a third of my year in transit,
Mm.
basically. I flew 83 times already this year. And so I'm not living at my full potential because I'm just not there. I don't have enough hours on my computer. In addition to that, my follow up hasn't been great this year because, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll get to you. And then guess what? I'm getting on another stage,
After
meeting another
after
long
uh,
list of
after my
people.
3 hour flight, I'll catch up with you, and then you forget about it because you caught up with other things, or you turn your phone back off of airplane mode, and all of a sudden you get bombarded. Yeah, I get
Putting
it.
out fires. Exactly. And then back to the weight loss goal. Why did I lose, or how did I lose 47 pounds last year? Because I sat still in one Airbnb for 3.5 months. And so the logical part of my brain is like, okay, Sarah, if living to your full potential is, having this percentage of muscle mass, this percentage of body fat, these things are important to you, is traveling making it easier or harder to reach those milestones? And it was a no-brainer that traveling is making it harder to reach these specific goals. Traveling hit so many of my goals over the last 5 years, which is why I think it's so important that we talked about like how much your personality changes in 10 years. So I know that I hit almost all of my travel goals over the last 5 years and more. I went to all 7 continents. I got paid to go to Antarctica. I mean, incredible things have happened over the last really decade. And I know incredible things are going to happen in the next decade, but I need to be in one place. And
Sure.
so, and I was so afraid, Greg, I was so afraid to stop being nomadic because I think it's what makes me interesting. Like, is Sarah Weaver interesting if she's not traveling all over the place? Well, guess what? The answer is yes, but I didn't believe that. I thought that people liked me because I'm the homeless homeowner. Like, it's interesting that I buy and manage my properties from afar.
Well, it's also the change is hard. I mean, it's any change. You start a new anything, you're afraid. I mean, you go back to weight loss. A lot of times people don't want to lose weight because they're afraid of losing friends. They're afraid of new connections. They're afraid of, well, now I have to go to the gym and learn all this stuff that I don't know or figure out a way to do it that I don't understand yet. They're afraid of failing or they're afraid of jumping into something and looking stupid because they don't know. I mean, all these fears pop up. So anytime you start
Mhm.
anything new, your brain is going to be like, whoa, 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 this is uncharted territory. I'm in panic mode here. I don't know if I should be, like, where should we be? And that's where you have to just take that step back and be like, what do I want my life to look like? Backtrack to now, take those steps one by one, and just enjoy that process or enjoy that journey, which is so cliche, I know. But living in the present and just being grateful for the challenges and the emotions and the changes that are happening is a much better place than being fearful of all those things. So
Yes.
congratulations, number one, for doing what you did over the last 5 years. And because that was I'm sure very challenging. It's very odd. It's not something that a lot of people are able to do. And you said, I'm going to do it. That course of your life went through where it needed to be. And then all of a sudden you're saying, I'm going to reinvent myself. And so I'm going to say, kudos to you. And it's extremely, it's just amazing as a human being that you were able to do that. And I hope people listening to this use you as a beacon of light, that of inspiration for themselves, to say, well, if she can do it, if Sarah can do it, I can do the things that I want to do. We only get a short little blip on this earth, man. You got to, do the things that feel natural and that that are authentic to you. And I love that you're able to redefine that and move. I'd say we need to reschedule another one of these in like a year to see where we're at that point, because then we can have literally like 3 phases of your life, the nomadic Sarah, and then the make a decision change Sarah, and then here's where I'm at now, Sarah. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. And what's really cool is because I put in the work, I know what that Sarah is going to look like. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are some huge milestone goals that I've already committed to accomplishing. And so I'm already celebrating them, right? Like I'm already seeing like that I'm gonna have a Christmas tree in my house, you guys. I've never had a Christmas tree
Mm.
because I've never lived somewhere long enough to have a Christmas tree. And I'm just really excited about not only the personal goals but also professional, but then also the real estate goals. As much as I love buying remote, I'm so excited to live somewhere where I can go drive by a property or I can see, an overgrown lawn and I can be like, oh, I'm going to knock on that door. I'm going to figure out if it's owner occupied. I'm going to make some phone calls. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of properties under contract this year because it's almost like I've been gearing up for the last, 2, 5 years to do exactly that.
Well, and let's be honest, in the real estate world, it's a lot easier to invest in things that are closer to you. I mean,
Hmm.
you're right there. In fact, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's whole series talks about buying something that's near you within 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20-minute drive. So that way it's near and you can fix things when things come up. So the fact that you've been investing in real estate all over the place, you were doing it in a harder way, so to speak, because it is a much broader area, instead of being more regional or local. So that's impressive too. I think what you're going to find is you're going to go, holy cow, I can develop these relationships faster. I can invest into real estate faster, and I can grow my portfolio faster because everything's here and people know what I'm
Hmm.
about and who I am, and therefore they come to you faster than ever before. So I think it's gonna flip on its head, and you're gonna be like, I don't know how to grow this fast. Holy cow. That's going to be something that I'm excited to hear about too.
Yeah, I'm ready for that challenge.
I love that. I'm ready for that challenge. That's what life is, man. It's just a series of challenges, and you should continuously work towards growing. And one of the things you mentioned too, if you're interested in people watching this, if you're interested in coaching or anything that Sarah does, click the links that we have below. We have all of her information, all of her social media, all of her websites. So go ahead and click on those things. If you're interested in growing your own personal life or your business growth, personal growth, that's what Fix Your Belief Systems is all about. It's helping you design your life on your own terms. Sarah's in that realm as well on the real estate side. I know some about real estate. I've done some investing in real estate, but mine is all about how do we build assets in business and how do we build assets in through investing, and then using other people's expertise to gain more money, which is why you would go to somebody like Sarah. So any final thoughts you'd like to add? Anything that pops up in your head that are inspirational or that you can give guidance to people listening to this?
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do after listening to this is set aside 45 minutes, ideally alone,
Mm.
probably outside of your house. I find that you can, get outside of, oh, should I, do the laundry or dust that baseboard? Set aside 45 minutes outside of your home and allow yourself to get into a flow of what do I want my life to look like? And you guys, it does not have to be grandiose, okay? Like the things that I have on my vision are like I own UGG slippers and like I have full-size toiletries, okay? Like we're not talking like, in-house staff, right? We're just talking the simple things that you actually see for your life. Is it one vacation a year? Is it, you are training for a 5K? Whatever it is, there's no need for it to be some like incredible, grandiose thing. It just needs to feel really grand to you.
Ooh, that's a great statement. Just needs to feel really grand to you. I love that. One of the things that I like to do is I like to occasionally list out the things that I'm not happy with in my life right now.
Mm,
By listing the things that I'm not happy with, then I know the direct opposite must be true, which is if this was the direct opposite, then I would be happier with it. And then you can write those things down. And that's something that people can do that. You juxtapose them against themselves. It's just something we're very in tune with, not just society, but as human beings, we're in tune with negative thinking. It's survival. It's
yeah.
easier to think a
Will you
negative thought.
will you give us an example? Like what is something that you're
Well,
not
it's
happy
easier
with, just so we can
uh,
get an idea?
for me
Yeah.
currently. Well, I can give you examples I'll give you an example now too, but in the past, I looked at all five pillars of life and I was like, man, I would like my relationship with my wife to be better. And I'm like, okay,
Mm,
so what's not good? Well, what's not good is I don't feel like we're communicating enough. I don't feel like I'm heard. I don't feel like, she's happy with certain things. And so I just write those out. So then the flip side must have been true where I was like, okay, so if I communicate more, if I open up and show her what I'm thinking, and we have these conversations and I put effort into that, I noticed that I wasn't complimenting her like I used to. We've been married 20 years. I used to compliment more just on a regular basis. I think you get caught up in being familiar and you just stop doing certain things that you used to do. And so you take that relationship for granted and all of a sudden you're like, it's not as good as it used to be. Well, no kidding. You're not putting the effort into it. You're not doing the things you used to do. So it's just awareness of bringing those things to the surface and going, oh, that's something that I enjoy. It gives her confidence. Why wouldn't I be giving more compliments? I'm focused on different stuff. Currently right now it's the end of the year. Over the last couple months I've fallen off a workout routine. I've just gotten a little bit pudgier and I'm like, I don't like that. So being aware of that and saying I need to start making changes into that. And then what do as I go and go to the mentors that I've developed over the years, friends of mine, and say, okay, let me get more involved into what they're doing because by proxy I'll start being more active. I'll start eating a little bit better. I'll
hmm
start doing more activity and so on and so forth. And before you know it, guess what? Your life starts to change. But I think it's taking that quiet time. Personally, I meditate on a regular, I
hmm
mean daily basis. I meditate. And not like I meditate in like sit quietly and let your thoughts just go away to where you have quiet time in your own head where you're just eliminating thought. And all what happens is ideas start to spring up, they come to the surface. Um, you solve problems all of a sudden. You're like, wait, there's this logical solution that I was not getting through this noise. Noise is
Yeah.
gone. Now this logical solution comes up. And so, and then it's being willing to say, okay, well, what's it going to take to do that? It's actually a lot simpler than we make it. If you want a better relationship, if you want better health, or if you want better, to lose weight, if you want better financials, if you want a better career, a better job, it's not as complicated as we make it. If you really just go, okay, where am I at? What don't I like? What do I like? And what steps should I start moving towards to make it a little bit better every single day? And if you do that over
Yeah.
time, guess what happens? You're either getting a little better or a little worse in each of those things every day. If you constantly get a little bit better, then you're going to get better over time and you'll end up somewhere you don't even recognize anymore. So, we're all guilty of that. Life changes, things happen, and you lose sight of certain things. And that's why you have to come back to center and go, what does a good life look for me? Or as you put it, what does my life look at if I'm at my full potential? I love that full potential. And I really think that Pareto's principle, that 80-20 rule, comes into play. If you do 80% of the things you're supposed to do, you can get away with 20% of things you're not really supposed to do. But most people have that flipped. They're doing 80% of things, like you mentioned, doom scrolling. It's not
hmm
productive. It's not doing any good. It's not that you can't ever
No.
do it, just you shouldn't do it all the time. So, it's just figuring out
Yeah.
what is that 80% and doing a lot in that area. And then you can do whatever you want for 20% of the time.
Yeah, I really just like thank you so much for like opening up about, wanting to improve your relationship.
Oh yeah.
I think that the world would be a better place if everyone, men and women, daughters, friends, whatever the relationship, coworkers, if everyone just took a second to say, am I really happy with this relationship that I have? And then if you're not completely satisfied, what could I do to improve it?
Mm.
I mean, just think about how much less conflict there would be and how much satisfactory there would be. So, like, your wife is so lucky that you took a second to just even think about it for 5 minutes, let alone, I'm assuming you've taken action on her. You probably wouldn't have brought it up.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, like, what a blessing to both you and your wife.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but it's really it is a double, it's two sides. So I appreciate her for sticking through those times of uncertainty and where it wasn't as good as it could have been. But that I think the secret to a long relationship and a healthy marriage is simply um, helping the other person become the best version of them that they can be based on their
Hmm.
terms, not based on what you want them to be. So like what I just heard you say, and I love that you said this, you said, what could I do to be better for them? Because that is the
Hmm.
right way to look at it. Most people look at it, what could they do to be better? And they put the blame on them.
Yeah.
So you totally phrased that just perfectly, which obviously you would because you're such a
No,
great coach.
I'm such a catch. I mean, if anyone's listening here, I am still single.
And wanting to build a home and invest in real estate and build and have a family. So amazing. But it's funny though, people say, well, marriage is, there's good times and there's bad times. Well, the reason why there becomes bad times for the most part is you start to become selfish in the marriage, meaning you start focusing on your own goals and your own, hopes and desires and dreams and all these things. And you kind of lose sight of the
Hmm.
us vision that you had in the beginning. You get the me and then you get the her and then you get that us kind of gets separated. And so then there's tension because it's like, well, I want to grow multiple businesses and I want to expand and I want to whatever. And then she might be like, well, yeah, but I just want to be secure and travel and go and have fun. And you're like,
Hmm.
well, I thought I was doing this for you. She's like, I didn't
Yeah.
ask for any of that. All I want is us
Yeah.
to be together and have fun and go do experiences and experience life together. I'm like, oh, so then I developed this process where I take my vision and I write that down and she takes her vision and then we bring it together and lo and behold, there's this huge overlap right in the middle. And
Yeah.
so it, if you don't communicate that, then there's no way you're going to know. She has this great statement, which it's in the book, but it's if you guys are not on the same page, show them your page.
Mm.
Like that's such a great way of saying, talk about it. Just like, well, here's where I would like to go. Here's what I would like my life to look like with us in it, together. What does
Yeah.
yours look like? And how can we build it
Hmm.
together so that way we're growing towards each other and not away? And I think that's why a lot, divorce rates in America are so high number one, I don't think marriage is seen as big of a deal anymore compared to the way it was, maybe 60, 70 years ago. But the other thing is that I think people just focus on themselves over time and then their marriages grow apart. And then when their kids leave the house, all of a sudden they're like, I don't even know who you are. We've spent 15 to 20 years building our own little lives and we've been cohabitating. And now our kids, that was the thing that binds us together, are gone. And it's like,
Yeah.
now what? And so
Hmm.
I'll never forget this. My wife and I, for our 20th anniversary, we went to Mexico. We were sitting on this resort, and there's this empty nester syndrome that people talk about. You've heard of it, I'm sure, where kids are gone, and now you're like faced with redeveloping this relationship with your spouse, and you're like,
Yeah.
I looked at her and she looked at me, and we're sitting there quietly. We're sitting next to the beach, and she looks at me, and I'm like, we're gonna be just fine. And she's like, yeah,
Oh.
we're gonna be just fine because our daughter just went to college. Our son's 16. And he's like, dude, we've got so many adventures left in us that it's almost exciting to say, I'm ready for you guys to start your adventure as kids, and then we're going to be able to continue our adventure into this new era of this empty nester syndrome, which doesn't scare us at all. And I think that's where a lot of relationships fall because they hadn't focused on building a life together and what that looked like. And so it's the same process actually as what we have talked about individually. It's just now two individuals do that, and then you do one together. And that's kind of the
Hmm.
mastermind, the marriage one, where you're like, okay, I'm doing these things to get this result, and you're doing these things to get this result. And this is where that works together.
Well, and it's really interesting. I've had the blessing of having, parents that really, they don't just love each other, they really like each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like my house was just filled with laughter. Still to this day, when I visit my parents, I mean, I can hear them giggling
That's
from,
awesome.
the other room. And I asked them once, I said, how on earth have you guys made this work? I mean, they met when they were 16 and
Uh,
18 and they started dating. And they said, unlike our friends who met that young and grew apart in their 20s and then even further apart in their 30s and 40s and now 50s, every single decade and chapter we've grown alongside each other.
mm,
Wasn't always at the same speed, right? It wasn't that they like grew together all the time, but they grew next to each other
yeah.
and always had check-ins. And like, you good? Yep, we're good. And so I love that you looked at your wife and you said, we're gonna be just fine.
Dude.
Because I think that that's something that my parents, like, they constantly were checking in with each other, like, you're good. And the other thing is that my parents are partners. They're not projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot. I was always a nanny, and so I've been inside of a lot of people's homes. And I saw often that husbands and wives treated each other like they were a project.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may involve nagging or improving or wanting to change the person. And I know that I am not looking for a project. Like, they don't need to have all their shit together because there's parts of my life that I don't have together. But I'm not looking for a project. Like, no, thank you. I
Well,
know that
nobody
someone
wants
likes
that. Yeah, you
no,
don't want some fixer upper that you have to turn into what you want. That's a constant job that you're going to have forever if you're staying married to, forever. I mean, what you really
hmm
want is you want somebody that is that what I believe is the reason why my wife and I get along so well is I had someone that was allowing me to be me and was enjoying the process. I could be totally authentically me, goofy me, silly me, even dumb me when I made dumb mistakes. She's like, "Well, what'd you learn from that?" And let's move forward, right? But I just totally believe that, and it wasn't always perfect. Don't get me wrong. I mean, 5 years ago, we were probably in a really one of the more rough states of our relationship. But that's the point, though, is it was like it's fine that it's a rough spot because it's building character in our relationship, and then there's this constant desire to improve and to become better together, and then
hmm
it's just working together to find tools that make sense. But I can tell you it's very interesting because we don't know we didn't know, let's say, we didn't know a lot of couples that were, really happily married, if you will. There were
hmm
cohabitors that just kind of, we're buddies. We live together. There were people that try to get away from each other as much as possible. I'm going to go play golf 18 times this week, and nothing wrong with playing golf or anything. I love doing that, but there's just something that you bond you bond over time, you forge this fire together. And if you're constantly looking out for the other person and saying, how can I build you up? How can I be there to support you in becoming the best
Yes.
version that you want to become? And I'll be there to support you when you are off the rails, because don't get me wrong, I've been off the rails, and she's like, hey, time to move back in this other direction. I don't know if you noticed this. So we always call it, she's my wingman, I'm her wingman, and we
Yeah.
look out for each other. And yes, we fall down sometimes, but the other person's there to say, I get it. I've been there. Let's let me help you next time, or let's work together to figure it
hmm
out or fix it or improve it or whatever. Um, and having a cheerleader by your side always is something that is, I think, extremely important, as opposed to someone that's nagging you and beating you down and constantly, degrading your self-esteem. And I loved what you just said. I want a partner. I don't want a project. I don't want you to
hmm
treat me like a project. I don't want to treat you like a project. I want to say, hey, what does my life look like? The best possible outcome of my life. What is your best possible outcome? How do those overlap? And how can we build that thing together? And if you can do that and be honest with that, man, the life you can have and the experiences you can have are just extremely fulfilling, let's say.
Hmm.
It is nice at the end of the workday or at the end of doing anything. I'm like, I get to go home and hang out with, my friend, but also that happens to be my wife. And that's a thing that not a lot of people get to say. And I think in today's society, it's almost looked down upon to say that. I don't know. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh,
Yeah.
you're your best
Good,
friend's your
good.
wife.
Must be nice.
Yeah, maybe. Or they're
But
like, oh,
but
you're just, oh, what are you, a girl? Like, what does that mean? You're like, no, dude, she just, just when they say the better half or the better part of you, I mean, that's really, that can be
yeah.
true. Um,
Yeah, you found an awesome human that thinks you're awesome. I mean, I think you nailed it.
yeah, it is funny because I didn't, there's a lot of people that fell into the same category. So I don't want you to take this as woe is me because it's not. It's just the
Yeah.
reality. I didn't have a lot of self esteem because I didn't really understand me and I didn't have a lot of value placed on me. And when my wife and I met, I was 21 and she was like, wait a minute. So she basically filled out my asset list. She's like, so you're 21, you're in grad school, you're going to be a doctor, you play music, guitar, you sing, you played baseball, you're in shape, you're a good guy. Like what's your catch? Like what is the deal? So she listed that out for me and I had never considered that
Mm.
I was valuable like that. I was
A
like,
catch.
dude, when
A
you list it,
catch.
yeah, like when you list it like that, it sounds pretty dang good. She's like, yeah. And so I was like, well, my catch is I live with my grandma. She's like, you're 21 living with your grandma going to grad school. Like that's your catch, really?
Also, we can fix that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so anyway, it's just kind of interesting. So that was kind of the beginning of me going, maybe she flipped that little switch and maybe I am worth something. And if there's anything I can say
Mm,
to people listening to this, it's that you are valuable. You are worth
mm.
something. You have a unique spirit, you have uniqueness in your life, and you can do a great and amazing things if you believe you can do them. And how do you believe you can do them? You get around the right people and you start paying attention to your thoughts and you listen to people like Sarah and myself and you just kind of figure out what feels authentic and good and you move in that direction. It's that simple. Don't make it harder. So,
Yeah, I think I'll end with this, Greg, which is I really believe that you and everyone listening has a greatness inside of them,
mhm,
and they need to give themselves permission to live out their greatness.
I love that. Give yourself permission. I wrote that down earlier. And everyone listening to that, take Sarah's advice. Give yourself permission to live out your greatness. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for belief systems. I hope you have gained valuable insight and inspiration to challenge your own belief systems. If you are ready to take the next step and join the Fix Your BS community dedicated to your personal transformation, check out my coaching group by clicking the link in the description, where we will work together to turn your dreams into reality. Remember, the only thing standing in between you and your goals are your beliefs and your actions. So let's fix them. Until next time, keep believing in yourself. Thanks, Sarah, for being here. And we will see you all soon on the next episode. All right. Thanks, Sarah. You are awesome. What a great conversation.
That was fun. That was really fun.
Yeah, it really is, man. I love talking to people like you that kind of get that mindset. They're open, if you will, and not closed down. Most people are closed. They're afraid to be authentic. And I love that you're just like,
Yeah.
here I am in all my greatness, like me, love me, hate me, I don't care. I'm going to do me.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. Well, I think it's really interesting. Like it's amazing that you met your wife at 21, but I recently had someone say to me that they think that waiting until later in life is actually a hack because you and we clearly are on this path of we're interested in personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've probably seen with a lot of your clients, is that somewhere along the way, one of the people got into personal development and they hopped on the train, but they left their partner at the train station.
Yep.
And I think that becomes a huge issue in people's marriages. I think when I went to my first like mindset, retreat, it was 30 people. I was the only unmarried person, but there was about 7 or 8 divorced people.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, it's a lot. I mean, that math is not mathing. Like, what happened? And so I'm nosy, so I started to ask questions. And they said, they were like, my partner just like wasn't into this, like wasn't into real estate, wasn't into personal development, was what's the word? Almost defensive
Hmm.
when I started changing and improving, because that meant, oh, what do I have to start improving? I don't really want to.
No, I totally agree with you. I've actually said that you don't really know who you are until you're about 25. And so
Hmm.
I think later on in life is actually a better time. Um, it's interesting. I believe that if you take the expectations of when and where and how something will happen, and you just keep the idea open that you want to be guided to what is going to meet your goals, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So you
Yeah.
stop focusing on, well, how is this going to happen and when is it going to happen and where is it going to happen, and you just go, look, here's the deal. I would like a spouse that supports me in my goals, that I love hanging out with, and we have similar interests, not exactly the same, but similar interests,
Yeah.
and that lights me up, and I light them up, and we just love hanging out together, and want to spend the rest of our lives together. Like, you kind of keep it open like that. It's kind
Yeah.
of interesting because it was the night where both of us, my wife and I, both said I went to this, it was called the beginning of a trimester party. It's in grad school, you have trimesters. And so they had a beginning and end every year, every trimester party. And I went with a bunch of my buddies, a bunch of guys. They drove me there, and she went with a bunch of her friends, her girlfriends. She drove them there. And so both of us that night had said, dude, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm not looking for a guy or girl. I'm just hanging out with my friends. I'm just, it's
Yes.
almost like you take the expectations off the table, and then the universe goes, here you go. Here's the thing you've
Yeah.
been looking for, that you've been getting in your own way, that you've been denying because you wouldn't leave me alone and let me show it to you. And we ended up, it was a bar, and at 3 a.m, the lights come on, and I'm like, holy cow, we've been talking for like 4 or 5 hours. What in the world? Her friends are gone, my friends are gone, and we're like, what in the world? And this is before Uber, you couldn't just call an Uber, before really smartphones. And so she's like, you can't, what are we going to do? You can't drive my, she had a Jeep at the time. She's like, you can't drive my Jeep. And I was like, why? She's like, it's a stick shift. I'm like, I can drive a stick shift. She's like, what? Because, growing up in the city, most people don't know how to drive a stick. I grew up on a farm. And so she's like, awesome. So I was able to take her home and everything. And it was just one of those things that was like, when you get out of the way, when you tell the universe kind of, hey, this is what I'm looking for, not specifically, but like,
Hmm.
here's the feelings I want to feel. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, in my experience, that person showed up. We met in February, got married in September of the same year. And, we 20 years later are, enjoying each other's company still, which is kind of a very odd thing. For most people, that sounds crazy. But
Yeah.
that being said, I was always kind of, more mature for my age. At 19, I'm in grad school. At 21, is when we met. So I think, though, that the hack is figuring yourself out, experiencing life. I think traveling is a very important thing, for people to do, so they experience
Hmm.
different cultures, figure
Yeah.
themselves out. The only way you figure yourself out is through experience, positive and negative. Pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your experiences. What is good? What is bad to you? Write
Hmm.
those things down. Oh, I didn't like this. I do like that, whatever. And leave yourself open to the possibilities of life as it comes to you. And all of a sudden, you'll find that you have developed a really good understanding of who you are and what you want. And I think, the universe will kind of just, and you can call it whatever, God, the universe, light source,
Yeah.
doesn't matter, your creator. It will show you, and it will reveal the thing that makes the most sense to you, and you just have to be open to achieve it,
Hmm.
or to receive it, instead of closed off, which is where most people live. I can't do that, it's not possible,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and they just tell themselves they can't do stuff when they really can if they open themselves up.
Yeah. All right. Well, in with this story.
Oh,
This
I
is
love
like
this
one of
story.
those, this is like one of those, like it's way too early to be talking about it, but I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
So I made the decision about 8 weeks ago that I was moving to Kansas City. I started writing offers on duplexes and fourplexes and whatever. And then Monday through Thursday, I was in Kansas City at my parents' house about 5 weeks in a row because I was speaking every weekend at a conference.
Mm.
And so it just made sense for me to go to Kansas City. I was looking at properties with my agent and I downloaded a dating app. And I started talking to, I don't know, 5 people, 5 guys, and didn't go out with any of them until like week 3. I went on a date. And frankly, I thought he was going to be really boring. He grew up in my town. We went to a neighboring high school, went to the same university, but unlike me, he moved back to Kansas City and he's lived there ever since. He's an accountant, CPA. I was like, okay, we'll see. The date was good. Wasn't like the best date I've ever been on, but it was good. But what I found myself doing is after the date, I drove around this neighborhood and I was like, can I see myself really doing this?
Mm.
Like, can I see myself like dating someone like that and living in, this? I owned a house nearby. I owned a house like in the neighborhood behind. And I was like, maybe. And I was like, not only maybe, like, it actually sounds like really good.
Mm.
Like, sounds like really satisfying to like live a normal life, whatever that might be. So I went and I hosted my biggest event of the year that weekend. And he sent it was all green flags. He texted me, good luck with your event. How's it going? All the right things. We went on a second date the following week. It was such a good date that we went on a date the next day
Mm.
and the next day. The issue is that I already had this month planned in Mexico City, and I wasn't going to change my plans for a boy.
Mm.
And so I came to Mexico City. I've been here 2.5 weeks. We've talked every single day.
Wow.
I've gone under contract while I was here, which was the goal. I've been trying to go under contract for 7 weeks. And now I'm flying back to Kansas City on Friday. He's picking me up from the airport, and I close on my house the following Friday.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so it's way too early to like
Yeah.
say that this is
But
this is the
just
one or whatever it might be. But I can't ignore the fact that I did exactly what you said. I just was like, okay, I surrender. Like
exactly.
I'm gonna go out with boring Kansas boys.
Well, it's
See what
funny though,
happens.
is like I said, it's all about experiencing life. And really, when you are paying attention to the emotional state, I believe positive and more positive the emotion that you're experiencing when you're doing something, and I mean true, authentic positivity. I
Yeah.
believe it is more in line with who you really are, with
Hmm.
your authentic self. I believe that the more negative you experience emotion as you're experiencing life, the further away you are from your authentic self. And that's what emotion
Hmm.
is telling you.
Yeah.
And so when you doubt yourself, the reason why you experience negative emotion with that is because your creator doesn't doubt. It's all love and gratitude and appreciation, and there's no resistance in those things. So the more resistance
Yeah.
you have with negative emotions and negative thoughts, the more you are at odds with your creator. Therefore it feels bad, negative emotion. And so when you're
Yeah.
experiencing those, I believe that you go, oh, this is great. This is telling me, it's my guidance system. It's telling me that I'm thinking something incorrect. What am I thinking? And then the opposite is true when you're like you're experiencing joy and elation and all these positive things. Then you're like, I must be on the right track. Interesting. This is easy. There's less resistance. And
Yeah.
therefore
I feel
I'm
normal.
going to
Like
continue this because it feels good. Yes. So that being said, I really appreciate you. I got to go. But
Yeah.
keep me posted on everything. I love it.
I
Next time I'm
will.
in KC, I'll let you know, and
We'll go out for barbecue.
we can go hang out. Oh, I love me some barbecue. So Sarah, I
Excellent.
appreciate you. If you need anything in the future, let me know. But congratulations on your change, this change in your life. I look forward to
Thank
seeing and
you.
hearing about it. And really, congratulations on being an amazing individual that is willing to take those risks and willing to
Thanks.
jump out into uncharted territories like so many people won't do. So,
Thank you.
congrats.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.